I let my best friend crash in my spare room, then I came home early and found my ex wearing my sweatshirt. 3 months ago I handed Ethan a key because he swore he just needed a couple weeks, and I believed him like an idiot. Then I walk into my own kitchen and Lily's standing there in my faded college hoodie, like I'm the one interrupting something. The worst part wasn't the cologne or the late-night balcony calls, it was how comfortable they looked in my space, like they'd already rewritten the rules and I was just catching up. Hi, I'm Marcus, I'm 29, and 3 months ago I gave my best friend a key to my apartment because he said he had nowhere else to go. That key is probably the biggest mistake I've ever made. Ethan and I met freshman year of college. Same dorm floor, same terrible taste in cheap beer, same delusion that we'd both be millionaires by 30. He was the kind of guy who could talk himself into, and out of, anything. I was the steady one. The planner. The guy who actually read the lease before signing it. When he called me at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, his voice sounded hollow. Bro. I'm screwed. His startup had collapsed. Investors pulled out. His girlfriend dumped him the same week. He'd burned through his savings trying to keep the business alive. Rent was due in 5 days. I just need a couple weeks, he said. Until I get back on my feet. I didn't hesitate. I had a 2-bedroom apartment. The second room was basically a storage unit with a treadmill I never used. I told him he could stay as long as he needed. No rent. No utilities. Just, get stable. He showed up with 2 suitcases and a gaming PC. That was it. No bed frame. No plan. At first, it felt good. Like I was doing something that mattered. We'd stay up late, order takeout, joke about how this was our divorce era. He'd thank me constantly. You're saving my life, he told me one night. I believed him. What made it complicated was that 2 months before Ethan moved in, my girlfriend of 3 years, Lily, had broken up with me. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just quiet and final. We want different futures, she'd said. Which is code for, I'm done. I wasn't over her. Not even close. Her shampoo was still in my shower. I hadn't deleted the photos. I still checked her Instagram like it was a reflex. Ethan knew all of that. He was there the night she ended it. Sat on my couch while I stared at the wall and tried not to cry like a 12-year-old. She doesn't deserve you, he'd said. I held on to that. About 3 weeks into him staying with me, I started noticing small things. He'd leave the apartment dressed nicer than usual. Actual cologne. Button-down shirts instead of hoodies. Interview? I'd ask. Yeah, he'd say quickly. Something like that. He was suddenly protective of his phone. Taking calls on the balcony. Smiling at texts. I figured he'd met someone on a dating app. Honestly, I was relieved. It meant he was moving forward. One Friday night, I came home early from work. I'd had a migraine building all afternoon. The apartment was quiet. Lights off except for the kitchen. And I heard laughing. Not just his. Her laugh. You know how certain sounds hit your nervous system before your brain can catch up? That was it. My chest tightened before I even stepped into the room. Lily was standing in my kitchen. Wearing one of my old college sweatshirts. Ethan was leaning against the counter, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that made sense. For a second, nobody moved. Then she said, "Oh." And Ethan went pale. That's the moment I realized the interviews weren't interviews. They were dates. And my best friend, the guy I let live in my home for free, hadn't just moved on. He'd moved in on her. The air in that kitchen felt heavier than anything I'd ever breathed. I remember staring at the sweatshirt first. Gray. Faded logo from our college intramural team. She used to steal it all the time because it smelled like me. Now it looked like it belonged to someone else entirely. Marcus, she said softly, like I was the one who just walked into something inappropriate. Ethan straightened up so fast he knocked his water glass over. It shattered on the tile. Neither of them looked down. How long? I heard myself ask. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too calm. Too level. They glanced at each other. That glance told me everything before either of them spoke. "It's not what you think," Ethan said. I actually laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't have any humor in it. "You're in my apartment. With my ex wearing my clothes." Lily crossed her arms. Defensive. "I didn't know you'd be home." That was the part that sliced me open. Not an apology. Not even a hint of guilt. Just inconvenience. "So you've been here before," I said. Silence again. Ethan tried stepping toward me. "Bro, I was going to tell you." "When?" He hesitated. That was answer enough. Apparently, this had been going on for weeks. The late nights. The cologne. The balcony calls. All of it. And the whole time I'd been covering his groceries. Paying the electric bill. Giving him a place to rebuild his life. He'd been rebuilding it with her. She reached out first, he blurted. Lily shot him a look. "Ethan." I felt something in my chest shift. Not anger exactly. Something colder. "She what?" "She texted me after you guys broke up," he said quickly. "Just to check on you." We talked. It wasn't planned. I looked at her. "You texted him?" Her jaw tightened. "You shut down after the breakup." I tried calling. "You didn't want to talk." I swallowed. That part was true. I'd gone quiet. Buried myself in work. But texting my best friend? "So instead of talking to me," I said, "you started dating him." "It didn't start like that," she insisted. "We just connected." Connected. That word felt like acid. Ethan stepped closer again. "I didn't mean for this to happen." "You didn't mean?" I finally snapped. "You're sleeping in the next room. Eating my food. Using my Wi-Fi to FaceTime her." Neither of them denied it. The migraine I'd come home with was gone. Replaced by something sharper, clearer. "How long?" I asked again. 3 weeks, Lily admitted. 3 weeks. Which meant almost from the moment he moved in. All those nights he'd sit across from me on the couch while I scrolled through old photos of her. He knew. He was already seeing her. "I needed somewhere safe to land," he said quietly. And she did too. I felt like I was watching my own life from outside my body. "So my apartment became your little recovery center." "That's not fair," Lily said. "No," I replied, finally looking her dead in the eyes. "None of this is." And then Ethan said the one thing that made my hands start to shake. "We didn't want to hurt you. That's why we kept it quiet." As if secrecy was kindness. As if betrayal was somehow gentler when it was hidden. I realized in that moment this wasn't an accident. It wasn't messy timing. It was a choice. Repeatedly. In my home. Behind my back. And they were still standing in my kitchen like I was the interruption. I don't remember deciding to do it. I just heard myself say, "Get out." Not loud. Not dramatic. Just final. Ethan blinked. "Marcus, come on." "No." I shook my head. "Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now." Lily's eyes widened. "You can't just throw him out like that." I turned to her slowly. "He's not on the lease." That shut her up. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing like he could walk this into a different outcome. "I have nowhere to go." The irony almost made me smile. "Funny. That's what you said 3 weeks ago." He stopped pacing. "You're seriously choosing pride over our friendship?" That word hit me harder than anything else had. Pride. Like this was about ego. Like I was some jealous ex who just couldn't handle rejection. "I chose our friendship," I said quietly. "When I gave you a key." Silence. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. The world kept moving like nothing was collapsing in my kitchen. Lily stepped closer to him. Subtle, but protective. I noticed everything now. The way her body angled toward his. The way his hand brushed hers without thinking. They weren't new. They were comfortable. That's when the timeline clicked into place. You two were talking before she ended it, weren't you? Neither of them answered. I looked at Ethan. Were you? He exhaled slowly. It wasn't like that. That's not what I asked. His jaw tightened. She vented about you sometimes. About feeling stuck. About you shutting down when things got hard. Each word felt deliberate. Defensive. I glanced at Lily. She didn't deny it. So you were her sounding board, I said. While I was still with her. It was just advice, Ethan insisted. You know how we talk. Yeah. I did. We talked about everything. Except apparently this. She felt alone, he added. I just listened. I let out a breath that felt like it scraped my lungs on the way out. And somewhere between listening and helping, you decided she was better for you. That's not fair, Lily said again, but her voice was softer now. I laughed under my breath. You keep saying that. The truth settled heavy in my chest. This didn't start after the breakup. It didn't start when he moved in. It started in the small conversations. The complaints. The comparisons. He knew my insecurities. He knew where I struggled. And he positioned himself exactly where I was weakest. I told you everything, I said to him. Every fight. Every fear. You sat there and nodded. I was trying to help, he said. By replacing me? That's when he finally snapped. Maybe she needed someone who actually showed up. The words hung there. I felt them land. Not explosive. Not loud. Just devastating. Because part of me wondered if he was right. I had shut down after my dad got sick. I had buried myself in work. I had let the relationship drift. But there's a difference between being imperfect and being betrayed. I walked to his room and grabbed one of his suitcases. Tossed it into the hallway. Then the next. Marcus, Lily said, following me. Don't do this. I turned around, exhaustion replacing the anger. You already did. Ethan stood frozen in the living room. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. You're really ending this? He asked. I met his eyes. You already did that too. He didn't argue after that. That's what hurt the most. No dramatic speech. No desperate apology. He just started packing like he'd been expecting this ending all along. I stood in the hallway while he folded his clothes into the same 2 suitcases he'd arrived with. The room already looked less like him. The air felt lighter. Or maybe that was just shock. Lily hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was some unpredictable storm. You're overreacting, she said quietly. I actually smiled at that. He moved into my apartment and started dating you behind my back. It's not that simple. It is, I replied. You just don't like how it sounds out loud. Ethan zipped the first suitcase. The sound felt final. He didn't look at me when he spoke. I never meant for it to overlap. Overlap. Like my relationship was a scheduling conflict. When did it start? I asked again, because apparently I wasn't done hurting myself. He hesitated. Just long enough. A few weeks before you guys officially ended. The words didn't hit like a punch. They sank. Slow and heavy. So while I was trying to fix things, I said, you were building something with her. She said you were already checked out, he replied. I turned to Lily. Is that what you told him? Her eyes flickered. I felt alone. I nodded slowly. And instead of telling me that directly, you told him. You weren't listening to me, she snapped. And you think this is listening? I gestured between them. Sneaking around. Ethan finally met my eyes. We didn't plan it. It just happened. I shook my head. Nothing just happens for weeks. That's when I saw it. Not guilt. Not exactly. Just conviction. Like they believed their version of this. Like I was the collateral damage in a love story they'd convinced themselves was justified. He carried the first suitcase past me. The second followed. Lily stepped aside to let him through. Then she paused and looked at me. I didn't fall out of love with you because of him, she said softly. That almost made it worse. Then why? I asked. She swallowed. Because you stopped fighting for us. The hallway went quiet again. Maybe I had. Maybe I'd assumed 3 years meant security. Maybe I'd let stress and exhaustion turn me into someone distant. But even if that was true, I didn't deserve this. Ethan stood by the door, key in his hand. He looked at it for a long second before placing it on the console table. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time that night, I believed he meant it. But sorry felt small. Too small. They left together. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just locked it behind them and leaned my forehead against the wood. The apartment felt bigger now. Quieter. And painfully mine again. I walked into the spare room. The indentation from his mattress was still visible on the carpet. A faint outline of where he'd rebuilt his life. With her. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. I never wanted to lose you over this. I stared at it for a long time. Then another message came in. From Lily. I hope someday you understand. I looked around my empty apartment. At the couch where he'd comforted me after she left. At the kitchen where I'd found them. At the door where they'd walked out together. And I realized something that made my stomach twist. I didn't just lose a girlfriend. I lost the one person I thought would never cross a line. And now I had to figure out who I was, without either of them. The first night alone was the loudest silence I've ever heard. No keyboard clicking from the spare room. No late-night phone calls on the balcony. Just the hum of the refrigerator and my own thoughts looping like a broken record. I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I found myself scrolling through old messages between Ethan and me. Years of inside jokes. Voice notes. Plans about being best men at each other's weddings. It felt like reading letters from someone who'd already died. My phone buzzed again. Ethan. I'm staying at Lily's for now. Can we talk when you've cooled off? Cooled off. Like this was a tantrum. I stared at the message until my vision blurred, then tossed the phone onto the couch. A minute later, it buzzed again. Lily. I don't want you to think I used you. What we had was real. That one almost made me throw the phone across the room. What we had was real. As if real things couldn't be dismantled quietly behind closed doors. The next few days were strange. I went to work. Answered emails. Sat in meetings. Smiled when appropriate. But inside, something kept replaying. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of shared glances across my kitchen. 3 weeks of him sleeping 10 feet away from me after coming back from her place. 3 weeks of me thinking I was helping him survive. On Thursday night, there was a knock on my door. I knew it was him before I even checked. Ethan stood there alone. No suitcase this time. No smile either. Can I come in? Every instinct told me to shut the door. Instead, I stepped aside. He walked into the living room like he still belonged there, then stopped when he saw the spare room door closed. I wanted to explain, he said. You already did. No, not like that. He ran a hand over his face. He looked tired. Older. She's not the villain in this, he said. I let out a hollow laugh. That's your opening line. She felt invisible, he insisted. You were shutting down. After your dad's diagnosis, you weren't present anymore. There it was again. The justification. I was drowning, I said quietly. And instead of throwing me a rope, you started swimming toward her. He flinched. I didn't plan to fall for her. But you did. He nodded once. Silence settled between us. Heavy, familiar. I never wanted to replace you, he said. You didn't replace me, I replied. You erased me. That landed. I saw it. He looked around the apartment, like he was seeing it differently now. I miss this. I miss us. My chest tightened. Because I missed us too. That was the cruelest part. You don't get both, I said. His jaw clenched. So that's it. Years gone. You made a choice, I said. Every day for 3 weeks. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he asked the question I knew was coming. If I had told you the moment it started, would it have changed anything? I thought about that. About honesty. About betrayal. About whether transparency would have softened the blow or just moved the explosion earlier. I don't know, I admitted. And that uncertainty felt worse than anger. Because somewhere under all the hurt, there was still history. Still loyalty. Still the ghost of who we used to be. And that's what made this unbearable. Not just losing them. But realizing I might still love them both in different ways. And having to choose myself anyway. He stood there waiting for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Or permission to keep a foot in both worlds. I looked at him and saw every version of us at once, 18 and reckless, 22 and broke, 25 and convinced nothing could touch our friendship. And then I saw the present. You don't get to come back in here like this is a rough patch, I said quietly. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. He swallowed. So what are you saying? I'm saying I can't be your safety net anymore. The words didn't feel powerful. They felt necessary. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected it but hoped I'd surprise him. She makes me happy. There it was. The honest version. I let that sink in. It stung, but not the way it had a week ago. It felt clarifying. I hope she does, I said. And I meant it. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal, at some point, the anger burns itself out. What's left is just truth. And the truth was simple. They chose each other. And now I had to choose myself. I won't badmouth you, I added. I won't try to turn people against you. But we're not what we were. He nodded again. His eyes were glassy now. I'm sorry, he said one last time. I know. That was the closest we were going to get to closure. He walked to the door, hesitated like he might hug me, then thought better of it. When it clicked shut behind him, I didn't lean against it this time. I just stood there. Breathing. The next few weeks were quieter than I expected. No dramatic fallout. A couple mutual friends reached out, confused. I kept it simple. We needed space. That was enough. I boxed up the last of his things and dropped them at a mutual friend's place. I donated the treadmill. Rearranged the spare room. Turned it into an office. I deleted the photos. That one took the longest. Lily texted once more. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Just, finality. Months passed. One afternoon, I ran into them at a coffee shop. They were sitting close, laughing. For a split second, the old ache flared up. But it didn't own me anymore. Ethan looked up first. Our eyes met. There was a flicker there, memory, maybe regret, but no hostility. I gave a small nod. He nodded back. Lily offered a tentative smile. I returned it. Polite. Distant. And then I walked away. Not because I was weak. Not because I couldn't handle it. But because I finally understood something I didn't that night in my kitchen. Losing them didn't mean I lost my worth. It meant I stopped trying to hold on to people who were already halfway out the door. I still think about him sometimes. About us. About how easy it is to cross a line when you convince yourself the story justifies it. But I don't replay it the same way anymore. Now when I lock my apartment at night, it feels like mine. No ghosts in the spare room. No half-truths in the kitchen. Just me. And for the first time in a long time. That's enough.